The plasma cannon's energy beam swept across the battlefield, cutting down 3 Zephyrian warriors in a single burst. Captain Jake Morrison dove behind a crystalline formation as return fire scorched the air where his head had been moments before. His squad was pinned down on the planet Vaelthara, and their mission had gone from reconnaissance to survival in less than 10 minutes. "Morrison, we've got movement in Sector 7, Sergeant Lisa Ryan called through the comm system, her voice tight with tension. "Looks like a wounded civilian dragging herself toward the combat zone." Jake peered around the crystal outcrop and spotted what Ryan had seen. A figure in flowing robes was crawling across the purple sand, leaving a dark trail behind. The being's lower body appeared severely damaged, and she moved with desperate determination despite obvious agony. What caught Jake's attention wasn't just her distress, but the ornate crown that somehow remained perfectly positioned on her head, even as she struggled forward. "That's not just any civilian," Jake muttered, recognizing the distinctive ceremonial dress of Zephyrian nobility. The golden threads woven into her robes caught the light from the planet's twin suns, marking her as someone of extreme importance. A Zephyrian patrol unit spotted the crawling figure and began advancing with weapons raised. Jake knew they intended to finish what some previous attack had started. The wounded noble was directly between his squad's position and the approaching enemy forces, making her both a tactical obstacle and a potential asset. "Ryan, Martinez, cover me," Jake ordered, checking his weapon's charge level. "I'm going for the package." "Sir, that's suicide," Private Danny Martinez protested. "Those patrol units have heavy weapons, and we don't even know if she's friendly." Jake was already moving. He sprinted across the open ground in a zigzag pattern, avoiding energy blasts that turned sand into glass around his boots. The Zephyrian noble looked up as he approached, her large violet eyes wide with surprise and pain. She spoke rapidly in her native language, pointing at her mangled legs and then at the advancing patrol. "I don't understand you, but I get the picture," Jake said, scooping her up in his arms. She was lighter than expected, her bone structure clearly different from human anatomy. "Hold tight, Princess." The return journey proved more challenging. Carrying the injured Zephyrian while dodging enemy fire required every bit of Jake's combat training. Ryan and Martinez provided covering fire, their plasma rifles lighting up the battlefield. Jake felt something warm and wet soaking through his uniform where the alien's damaged legs pressed against his chest. They reached the crystal formation just as Jake's strength began to fail. He set the wounded noble down gently, immediately applying emergency medical patches from his kit to slow the bleeding. The damage was extensive, and Jake realized her legs were beyond field treatment. "My name is Princess Lyralei," she said in accented but clear English, her voice weak but determined. "I am daughter to Queen Avalynn of the Zephyrian Collective." Jake's blood ran cold. He had just rescued the crown princess of the very species they were at war with. But looking at her pain-filled eyes, he couldn't bring himself to regret the decision. She was barely more than a teenager by human standards, and she was dying. "Well, Princess, you picked a bad day for a walk," Jake said, trying to keep his tone light while working on her wounds. "But you're safe now." "Safe," she repeated as if testing the word. "I have never been safe. My mother's enemies hunt me, and now your people see me as their enemy too." The sound of approaching vehicles cut their conversation short. 3 Zephyrian hover tanks crested a nearby hill, their cannon turrets rotating toward the crystal formation. Jake's squad was outnumbered and outgunned, with nowhere to retreat. "Ryan, get on the comm and call for immediate extraction," Jake ordered. "Tell them we have a high-value prisoner." "I am not your prisoner," Lyralei said quietly, "and those tanks belong to my cousin Prince Theron. He arranged the attack that damaged my legs. He wants me dead so he can claim succession rights." Jake stared at the approaching vehicles, then at the wounded princess. The political implications were staggering. If Theron succeeded in eliminating Lyralei, the moderate faction in the Zephyrian government would lose its heir. The war would intensify, and any hope for peace negotiations would die with her. "Change of plans," Jake announced. "We're not letting anyone take the princess." The first hover tank opened fire, its energy beam striking the crystal formation and sending molten fragments flying. Jake pulled Lyralei deeper into the makeshift shelter while his squad returned fire with their considerably smaller weapons. It was like throwing pebbles at a battleship. "You should leave me," Lyralei whispered, her face pale with blood loss. I cannot run, and I will not let good soldiers die for someone they barely know. Not happening, Princess, Jake replied firmly. Where I come from, we don't abandon people who need help. Another energy blast shattered part of their cover. Jake could hear Theron's forces repositioning for a final assault. They had perhaps minutes before being overrun completely. The princess looked at Jake with something approaching wonder in her violet eyes. Despite the desperate situation, despite the fact that he was technically her enemy, this human soldier was willing to die protecting her. She had heard stories of human stubbornness and loyalty, but experiencing it firsthand was something entirely different. As the sound of approaching footsteps grew closer, she realized that her life now depended entirely on the courage of strangers who owed her nothing and had every reason to consider her their enemy instead. The hover tanks thundered closer, their engines creating a deafening roar that shook the ground beneath the crystal formation. Prince Theron's voice boomed across the battlefield through amplified speakers, speaking in the liquid tones of the Zephyrian language. Princess Lyralei's face went ashen as she translated his words. He offers your squad safe passage off-world if you surrender me immediately, she said, her voice barely audible over the mechanical noise. He promises you'll be treated as prisoners of war under galactic conventions. Jake checked his weapon's power cell and found it nearly depleted. Martinez was down to his last energy pack and Ryan had taken shrapnel in her shoulder from the previous barrage. They were running out of options and ammunition simultaneously. What happens to you if we take his deal? Jake asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Theron will claim I died in the human attack, Lyralei replied. My mother will believe him because she trusts her nephew completely. Protect her for years while secretly orchestrating attacks against me. A new voice crackled through Jake's comm system. Lieutenant Commander Kevin Walsh from the orbital cruiser Defiant was attempting to establish contact. Morrison, we're tracking multiple Zephyrian capital ships moving into the system. Whatever you're doing down there, you need to extract immediately. Negative command, Jake responded. We have a situation that requires immediate medical evacuation. Princess Lyralei of the Zephyrian Collective is critically wounded and under attack from hostile forces. The silence that followed lasted nearly 30 seconds. When Walsh spoke again, his voice carried the weight of someone making a career-defining decision. Say again, Morrison. Did you say Princess Lyralei? Confirmed. She's the Queen's daughter, and she's bleeding out. We need emergency medical transport now. Jake could hear rapid conversations in the background before Walsh came back online. Morrison, you just became the most important soldier in the fleet. Hold your position. Medical frigate Phoenix is breaking orbit and heading your way. The sound of metal on stone announced the arrival of Zephyrian ground troops. Jake could see armored figures moving between the crystal formations, methodically searching each potential hiding spot. Their weapons were powered up and ready, leaving no doubt about their intentions. They're using thermal scanners, Ryan observed, pointing at the devices mounted on their helmets. They'll find us in about 2 minutes. Princess Lyralei struggled to prop herself up against the crystal wall. Despite her obvious weakness, determination filled her violet eyes. Captain Morrison, I need you to listen carefully. If I die here, Theron becomes heir to the throne. He has already made agreements with the hegemony faction to continue this war until humanity is completely destroyed. Jake felt ice form in his stomach. The hegemony faction represented the most aggressive elements within Zephyrian society. They viewed humans as a plague to be eliminated, rather than a species to be negotiated with. My mother leads the peace coalition, Lyralei continued, her words coming in short gasps. She wants to end this conflict through diplomatic means. But if Theron inherits, he will dissolve the coalition and launch a final assault on Earth itself. The reality of their situation crystallized for Jake. They weren't just protecting one injured alien. They were potentially preventing the complete annihilation of humanity. The wounded princess in his arms held the key to either peace or total war. Martinez, how much explosives do we have left? Jake asked, his mind racing through desperate possibilities. 2 plasma grenades and 1 thermal charge, Martinez replied. Not enough to take out those hover tanks, but we could probably collapse this crystal formation and create a temporary barrier. Jake studied the translucent formations around them. The crystals were beautiful but fragile, and a controlled collapse might buy them the time needed for extraction. It was a dangerous gamble that could easily kill them all, but staying put guaranteed death anyway. "Princess, can your people survive in a collapsed crystal cave?" Jake asked. "For a short time," she replied. "But Captain, if we bring down these formations, we'll be trapped until rescue arrives. If your ship is delayed or destroyed, we'll run out of breathable air." Jake weighed their options. Above them, the sounds of approaching soldiers grew closer. Behind them, Theron's hover tanks were positioning for a final devastating barrage. Around them, the crystal formations offered temporary concealment but no real protection. "Ryan, get me a direct channel to the princess's mother," Jake decided. "If we're gonna gamble everything, Queen Avalynn needs to know what's really happening here." "Captain, that's impossible," Ryan protested. "We don't have diplomatic communication access, and even if we did, she's probably light years away." Princess Lyralei reached into her robes with trembling hands and withdrew a small crystalline device. Despite their desperate circumstances, she managed a weak smile. "Emergency royal communicator," she explained. "Direct line to the palace on Zephyros Prime." Jake stared at the device, realizing he was about to make first contact with the leader of humanity's primary enemy. Either this conversation would save both their species, or it would be his last act before dying in an alien cave millions of miles from home. The weight of Earth's future suddenly rested in his hands, carried through the voice of a wounded alien princess who had chosen to trust him with secrets that could reshape the galaxy. The communicator began to emit a soft humming sound as it established connection across the vast distances of space. The crystalline device pulsed with soft blue light as it connected across the vast expanse of space. Within seconds, a holographic projection materialized above Princess Lyralei's palm, showing the regal figure of Queen Avalynn. Even through the miniaturized display, her resemblance to her daughter was unmistakable, though age and authority had hardened her features into something more commanding. The queen spoke rapidly in Zephyrian, her tone shifting from relief to alarm as Lyralei explained their situation. Jake watched the royal conversation unfold while keeping one eye on the approaching enemy soldiers. Time was running out, and they needed a miracle. "Mother, Captain Morrison of the human military saved my life," Lyralei said, switching to English so Jake could understand. "Prince Theron orchestrated the attack that destroyed my legs. He intends to kill me and claim succession rights." Queen Avalynn's expression darkened as she absorbed this information. Her violet eyes, identical to her daughter's, fixed on Jake with an intensity that made him feel as though she could see directly into his soul despite the vast distance between them. "Human captain," the queen said in accented but precise English, "my daughter tells me you risked your life to save hers, knowing she was your enemy. Why would you do such a thing?" Jake glanced at Lyralei, who was growing paler by the moment, then back at the holographic queen. "Your Majesty, she needed help. Where I come from, that's reason enough." The sound of energy weapons charging grew closer. Martinez held up 3 fingers, then 2, then 1, indicating the nearest patrol was almost upon them. Jake made a desperate decision. "Your Majesty, with respect, we need immediate assistance. Your nephew is about to kill your daughter and frame humanity for her murder. If that happens, any chance for peace dies with her." Queen Avalynn's expression shifted from suspicion to understanding. "You speak of peace, human captain, yet your fleets attack our colonies." "Those aren't our orders, ma'am," Jake replied honestly. "Most of us never wanted this war. We just want to survive." The first Zephyrian soldier appeared around the crystal formation, his weapon raised and ready to fire. Jake dove sideways, pulling Lyralei with him as an energy beam scorched the spot where they'd been sitting. Ryan and Martinez opened fire immediately, their plasma rifles illuminating the cave with deadly light. Through the chaos of combat, Queen Avalynn's voice rang out with absolute authority. "Captain Morrison, I am declaring an immediate ceasefire in this sector. Any Zephyrian who harms you or my daughter will answer to me personally." Jake could hear her speaking rapidly in her native language, presumably giving orders. Within moments, a different voice began broadcasting on all Zephyrian frequencies. Even without understanding the words, Jake could tell someone with significant authority was countermanding Prince Theron's orders. The attacking soldiers hesitated, lowering their weapons as confusion spread through their ranks. Jake seized the opportunity to apply fresh medical patches to Lyralei's wounds, while Ryan kept watch for any soldiers who might ignore the ceasefire order. "Theron will claim I am being coerced," Princess Lyralei whispered to her mother's image. "He has supporters who will believe I am speaking under human influence. Then we must provide proof of his treachery," Queen Avalynn replied. "Captain Morrison, I am transmitting medical authorization codes to your ship. My daughter requires immediate surgery that your people are uniquely qualified to perform." Jake felt his world tilt on its axis. "Ma'am, I don't understand. Human medicine for Zephyrian physiology?" Queen Avalynn exchanged a meaningful look with her daughter before continuing. "Captain, what do you know of the Zephyrian life cycle?" "Very little, Your Majesty," Jake admitted. "Our intelligence reports are mostly focused on military capabilities. Our people undergo a metamorphosis at approximately 25 Earth years of age," the Queen explained. "Lyralei is approaching that transition. Her current injury has damaged the biological triggers necessary for her legs to regenerate properly. Without immediate intervention, she will remain permanently disabled." Princess Lyralei took over the explanation, her voice growing stronger despite her physical condition. "Human medical technology includes regenerative techniques that our biology cannot achieve naturally. Your doctors could restore my legs completely, but the process would create a biological debt." Jake struggled to understand the implications. "What kind of debt?" "A permanent genetic bond," Queen Avalynn said solemnly. "If human medicine saves my daughter's ability to walk, she will carry human genetic markers for the rest of her life. By Zephyrian law, this creates an eternal obligation to the humans who helped her." The weight of this revelation settled over Jake like a heavy blanket. They weren't just offering medical assistance. They were potentially binding the future queen of the Zephyrian collective to humanity through unbreakable biological and legal ties. "And if Prince Theron becomes heir instead?" Jake asked. "Then this war continues until one of our species is completely destroyed," Queen Avalynn replied grimly. "Theron has already made agreements with the Hegemony faction. They plan to activate planet-killer weapons if they gain power." Jake looked down at Princess Lyralei, who watched him with desperate hope in her violet eyes. The choice was impossible yet simple. Save her and bind their species together forever, or let her die and watch humanity face extinction. The sound of approaching engines indicated that backup forces were arriving, though whether they belonged to Theron or the Queen remained unclear. Jake made his decision with the certainty that comes from having no real alternatives. "Your Majesty, we accept your terms. Princess Lyralei will receive the best medical care humanity can provide." Queen Avalynn nodded with visible relief, but her expression remained grave. "Then you must understand, Captain Morrison, that this decision will change the course of galactic history. My daughter will owe her life and her throne to human kindness, creating bonds that can never be broken." The medical frigate Phoenix dropped out of hyperspace with engines blazing, its hull gleaming silver against the purple sky of Vaelthara. Jake watched through his tactical scope as the ship descended rapidly toward their position, its medical bay already preparing for emergency surgery. The vessel's arrival sparked immediate chaos among the Zephyrian forces scattered across the battlefield. Prince Theron's voice boomed across multiple communication channels, alternating between his native language and broken English. His rage was obvious even through the translation barriers, and Jake could see several hover tanks turning their weapons toward the approaching human vessel. "Phoenix to ground, team," came the voice of Dr. Amanda Foster through Jake's comm system. "We're reading massive energy signatures from hostile vehicles. Can you guarantee safe landing?" Before Jake could respond, Queen Avalynn's holographic image flickered and intensified. She spoke a single word in Zephyrian that seemed to carry the weight of absolute command. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Every Zephyrian weapon system powered down simultaneously, and the hover tanks began withdrawing to defensive positions. "Your Majesty just declared a royal sanctuary," Princess Lyralei explained weakly. "Any violence in this area is now punishable by exile from Zephyrian space. Even Theron cannot openly defy such a decree." The Phoenix touched down with surprising gentleness for such a large vessel, its landing struts extending to accommodate the rocky terrain. The medical bay doors opened before the engines finished cycling down, revealing a full surgical team led by Dr. Foster herself. Jake had worked with Amanda before during previous campaigns, and her reputation as a miracle worker was well established throughout the fleet. "Captain Morrison, we need to move her immediately," Dr. Foster called out as she approached with a hovering stretcher. "I've reviewed the biological data Queen Avalynn transmitted, and this procedure is going to require every minute we can get." Jake carefully lifted Princess Lyralei onto the medical stretcher, noting how light she felt despite her tall frame. Her violet eyes remained fixed on his face as the medical team began attaching monitoring devices and intravenous lines. "Captain," she whispered, gripping his hand with surprising strength, "if I do not survive the surgery, please tell my mother that I chose this path willingly. The debt I am about to incur will bind our peoples together, but that bond must be one of honor, not obligation." Dr. Foster checked the readouts on her portable scanner and frowned. "Princess, your cellular regeneration systems are more damaged than we initially thought. This surgery will require integrating human stem cells with your existing tissue. The genetic integration will be permanent and irreversible." "I understand," Lyralei replied. "Do what must be done." As they moved toward the Phoenix's medical bay, Jake noticed that Zephyrian soldiers were emerging from concealment throughout the area. They weren't hostile, but rather appeared to be forming an honor guard around the medical ship. Even Prince Theron's forces maintained their distance, though Jake could see the prince himself standing atop his command vehicle with obvious fury radiating from his posture. Queen Avalynn's holographic presence followed them into the medical bay, her image projecting from the portable communicator that Lyralei still clutched. "Dr. Foster, you must understand the significance of what you are about to do. If you save my daughter using human biological materials, she will carry genetic markers from your species for the remainder of her life." "Doctor!" Foster paused in her preparations, looking between the Queen and her patient. "Your Majesty, I'm a doctor, not a diplomat. My only concern is saving lives." "And that dedication to preserving life, regardless of species, is exactly why this procedure will work," Queen Avalynn replied. "My daughter is choosing to bind herself to humanity through the most fundamental biological level possible. When she becomes queen, that bond will shape every decision she makes regarding human-Zephyrian relations." Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a heavy cloak. He had made a split-second decision to save an injured person, and now that choice was reshaping the political landscape of the entire galaxy. The irony wasn't lost on him that the future of two civilizations now rested in the hands of a military doctor who just wanted to heal people. "How long will the surgery take?" Jake asked. "Between 6 and 8 hours, Doctor," as Foster replied, already moving toward the operating theater. "The integration process requires precise timing, and we'll need to monitor her body's acceptance of the human genetic material throughout the procedure." As the medical team disappeared behind sterile barriers, Jake found himself alone with Queen Avalynn's holographic image in the soft hum of the Phoenix's engines. Through the viewports, he could see Zephyrian and human forces maintaining an uneasy truce, united only by their shared concern for the princess's survival. "Captain Morrison," Queen Avalynn said quietly, "I want you to understand what will happen if this surgery succeeds. My daughter will owe her life to human medicine and human courage. In our culture, such debts are sacred and permanent. When she inherits the throne, every policy decision she makes will be influenced by this obligation." Jake absorbed this information while watching the surgical team prepare their equipment. "And if Prince Theron can test her succession, then we will have civil war," the Queen replied grimly. "But a civil war is preferable to the complete annihilation that Theron plans for your species. At least in civil war, both our peoples have a chance at survival." The sound of additional ships arriving drew Jake's attention to the viewports. More Zephyrian vessels were descending from orbit, their configurations suggesting they belonged to different factions within the military hierarchy. The political implications of the princess's surgery were drawing interested parties from across the system. "Your Majesty, how many Zephyrians support peace with humanity?" Jake asked. Queen Avalynn's expression grew thoughtful. "Perhaps 40% actively support negotiation. Another 30% are undecided. The remainder follow Theron and the hegemony faction." She paused, studying Jake's face. "But Captain, even my supporters question whether humans can be trusted." Your actions today and this surgery will provide them with an answer they can accept. Dr. Foster's hands moved with precise efficiency as she guided the microsurgical instruments through Princess Lyralei's damaged neural pathways. The operating theater aboard the Phoenix hummed with activity as human and Zephyrian medical data merged on holographic displays, creating the first truly collaborative medical procedure in galactic history. Neural integration at 67%, called out Dr. Mark Thompson, Foster's chief assistant. The human stem cells are bonding with her existing tissue better than our projections indicated. Jake watched from the observation deck, still wearing his combat armor, despite being aboard a medical vessel. Queen Avalynn's holographic presence remained constant beside him, her violet eyes never leaving her daughter's unconscious form. Through the Phoenix's viewports, he could see the growing collection of ships from both species maintaining their careful distance. "Captain Morrison," the Queen said quietly, "I want you to understand the full implications of what is happening here. When Lyralei awakens, she will carry human genetic material in her legs for the rest of her life. Every step she takes will remind her of human kindness." Jake nodded, though he was beginning to grasp that the implications went far beyond gratitude. "Your Majesty, what happens if other Zephyrian leaders view this as contamination rather than healing?" Queen Avalynn's expression darkened. "That is exactly what Theron will claim. He will argue that my daughter is no longer pure Zephyrian, that she is unfit to rule because she carries human genetic markers. And your response to such claims? I will point out that she is alive because of human medical skill and human courage," the Queen replied firmly. "In our culture, life is sacred above all else. Any leader who would choose racial purity over survival is unfit to govern." Dr. Foster's voice interrupted their conversation through the intercom system. "Your Majesty, we are reaching the critical phase of the integration process. The next 2 hours will determine whether Princess Lyralei's body accepts the human cellular material permanently." "What are the risks?" Jake asked. "Rejection would mean complete loss of function in both legs," Dr. Foster explained. "But if the integration succeeds, her legs will actually be stronger than before the injury. The human stem cells will create hybrid tissue that combines the best characteristics of both species." Jake felt his stomach tighten. They weren't just performing surgery. They were creating the first human Zephyrian hybrid tissue ever attempted. The princess would literally carry part of humanity within her own body. Lieutenant Commander Walsh's voice crackled through the ship's communications system. "Morrison, we're detecting massive fleet movements throughout the system. It looks like half the Zephyrian military is converging on this planet." Jake moved to the bridge display, studying the tactical readouts with growing concern. Dozens of ships were approaching Vaelthara from multiple directions. Their allegiance is unclear, but their intentions obviously focused on the outcome of the surgery. "Your Majesty, are those ships friendly or hostile?" Jake asked. Queen Avalynn studied the display with obvious worry. "Mixed," she replied. "I recognize vessels from the Peace Coalition, but also ships aligned with the hegemony faction. Every major political group in our society wants to witness what happens here. And Prince Theron? He commands the largest single battle group," the Queen admitted. "If he chooses to ignore the Royal Sanctuary decree, we could face immediate combat once the surgery concludes." Jake realized they were walking a diplomatic tightrope with the fate of 2 civilizations hanging in the balance. Success in the operating theater might trigger political warfare that could make their current military conflict seem trivial by comparison. Dr. Ziada. "Foster," Jake called through the intercom. "How much longer until we know if the integration worked?" "Approximately 90 minutes, she replied. "We're monitoring cellular activity in real time, and the early indicators are promising." Jake studied the growing fleet formation outside. More ships continued arriving, creating an increasingly volatile mixture of competing interests and conflicting loyalties. If shooting started, the Phoenix would be caught in the center of a battle that could easily destroy them all. "Your Majesty, I need to ask you something directly," Jake said. "If your daughter survives this surgery with human genetic material in her body, will you honor the debt she mentioned? Will the Zephyrian collective genuinely pursue peace with humanity?" Queen Avalynn turned to face him fully, her holographic eyes boring into his with unmistakable sincerity. "Captain Morrison, if human medicine saves my daughter's life and gives her the ability to walk, she will owe you a debt that can never be repaid." That debt will become mine when I abdicate in her favor, and it will pass to every subsequent ruler in our royal line." "That's not what I asked," Jake pressed. "I asked if you'll pursue peace." "I will pursue more than peace," the Queen replied. "I will pursue alliance. A species capable of the selflessness you've shown, combined with the medical miracles your people are working in that operating theater, deserves to be our partner rather than our enemy." Jake felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. Alliance meant cooperation and mutual support, but it also meant entanglement in Zephyrian politics that humans might not understand or be prepared for. "Captain?" Foster's excited voice came through the intercom. "The integration is accelerating beyond our most optimistic projections. Princess Lyralei's body isn't just accepting the human stem cells, it's actively incorporating them into our existing neural networks." "Queen!" Avalyn's face showed the first genuine smile Jake had seen from her. "Doctor, does this mean the surgery will succeed?" "It means the surgery is succeeding right now, Doctor," Foster replied. "Her new legs are going to be extraordinary. The human Zephyrian hybrid tissue is showing capabilities that neither species possesses alone." Jake looked out at the assembled fleets, knowing that the princess's recovery would either usher in a new age of cooperation or trigger the most catastrophic civil war in Zephyrian history. Either way, there would be no going back to the simple conflict they had known before. Princess Lyralei's eyes opened slowly, the soft lighting of the recovery bay gradually coming into focus as she emerged from the anesthetic. Dr. Foster monitored her vital signs while Queen Avalynn's holographic presence filled the space between them with maternal concern and political tension. "How do you feel, Princess?" Dr. Foster asked, adjusting the monitoring equipment attached to Lyralei's newly reconstructed legs. Lyralei attempted to sit up, her face showing surprise as she felt strength returning to her lower body. "Different," she said quietly, looking down at legs that appeared identical to their original form but felt fundamentally changed. "I can sense the human genetic material. It feels like warmth flowing through unfamiliar pathways." Jake entered the recovery bay still wearing his combat armor, his expression mixing relief with concern for what lay ahead. Through the viewports, the assembled fleets continued their tense standoff, waiting for news of the surgery's outcome. "Princess, we need to test motor function." "Doctor," Foster explained, "the integration process created hybrid neural networks that combined human and Zephyrian characteristics. Your legs should be stronger than before, but the sensation will be different." With careful assistance, Lyralei swung her legs over the edge of the medical bed. Her first attempt to stand resulted in an unexpected leap that carried her nearly to the ceiling before Dr. Foster's quick reflexes guided her back down safely. "The hybrid tissue increases both strength and reflexive response time," Dr. Foster observed with scientific fascination. "Princess, you'll need to relearn basic motor control, but your capabilities now exceed baseline Zephyrian parameters significantly." Queen Avalynn watched her daughter's first tentative steps with visible emotion. "Lyralei, how does it feel to carry human genetic material within your body?" The princess paused, considering her answer carefully. "It feels like partnership, Mother. Not foreign invasion, but cooperation at the most fundamental biological level." She looked directly at Jake. "Captain Morrison, I can literally feel the life debt forming." "It's not psychological, it's becoming part of my cellular structure." Jake struggled to understand the implications. "Princess, what exactly does that mean in practical terms?" "It means that every decision I make for the rest of my life will be influenced by the genetic obligation I now carry toward humanity," she replied. "The human stem cells in my legs are sending constant signals to my brain, reminding me that I owe my mobility to human kindness and skill." Dr. Foster checked her scanner readings with growing amazement. "The integration is creating something unprecedented. The hybrid tissue is generating entirely new types of neural signals that neither species produces naturally." Queen Avalynn stepped closer to her daughter's moving image. "Lyralei, Prince Theron is claiming the surgery has made you unfit to inherit the throne. He argues that carrying human genetic material violates the purity requirements for royal succession." Princess Lyralei's expression hardened with determination. "Then he misunderstands what purity truly means. Pure leadership requires strength, wisdom, and a willingness to put your people's survival above personal prejudice. My new legs represent all three qualities. Lieutenant Commander Walsh's voice interrupted through the ship's communication system. Captain Morrison, we're receiving transmission requests from multiple Zephyrian factions. They want to speak directly with Princess Lyralei. Jake looked at the princess, who nodded her consent. Within moments, the recovery bay filled with holographic projections representing different Zephyrian political groups. Some faces showed curiosity, others displayed obvious hostility, and a few revealed calculated political interest. Prince Theron's image appeared among the crowd, his aggressive posture making his intentions clear. Cousin Lyralei, you have allowed yourself to be contaminated by alien genetic material. Our ancestors would be ashamed of such weakness. Our ancestors valued survival above all else, Lyralei replied firmly. They would celebrate the fact that former enemies chose to save my life rather than claim victory through my death. A voice from the Peace Coalition spoke next. Princess, if you inherit the throne with human genetic material, how can we trust your judgment regarding human relations? Won't you be biased toward them? Lyralei stood straighter, her hybrid legs providing stability that seemed to surprise even her. I will be equipped with unique insight into human character. I have seen their kindness firsthand, experienced their medical miracles, and felt their willingness to risk their lives for someone they barely knew. That perspective will make me a better leader, not a compromised one. And if we demand proof that you can lead effectively despite your changed biology, came a challenge from a hegemony faction representative. Princess Lyralei smiled for the first time since awakening. Then I will provide that proof immediately. Without warning, she launched herself across the recovery bay in a controlled leap that would have been impossible for unmodified Zephyrian physiology. She landed softly, spun gracefully, and returned to her original position in a display of enhanced agility that left the watching politicians speechless. The human genetic material hasn't weakened me, she declared. It has made me stronger, faster, and more capable than any previous heir in our royal line. If physical prowess matters to you, I now possess capabilities that neither species could achieve alone. Queen Avalynn beamed with obvious pride. My daughter speaks truth. She has been enhanced, not contaminated. Any leader who would reject such advantages for reasons of prejudice is unfit to guide our people through the challenges ahead. Jake watched the various political factions absorb this demonstration, noting the shift in expressions as practical considerations began outweighing ideological objections. The princess hadn't just received human medical treatment, she had become living proof that cooperation between species could produce benefits impossible for either side alone. Prince Theron's image flickered with barely controlled rage. This proves nothing except that she is no longer truly Zephyrian. I call for immediate succession trials to determine our next legitimate ruler. And I accept your challenge, Princess Lyralei replied without hesitation. Traditional trials, traditional rules, but with one addition. The winner will determine our species' future relationship with humanity. Victory gives me the right to negotiate alliance, while your victory gives you the right to continue this war to its bitter conclusion. The political battlefield had been set. Jake realized they had moved beyond simple medical treatment into something that would reshape the balance of power throughout the galaxy. The succession trials began at dawn on Vaelthara's primary continent, in an ancient amphitheater carved from living crystal that had witnessed 3,000 years of Zephyrian political contests. Representatives from every major faction arrived aboard their flagships, creating an orbital presence that turned the planet's sky into a constellation of waiting vessels. Princess Lyralei stood at the center of the crystalline arena, her hybrid legs providing stability that seemed almost supernatural compared to baseline Zephyrian physiology. Prince Theron faced her from the opposite end, his traditional armor gleaming under the twin suns as he prepared for combat that would determine their species' future. Jake watched from the human observation platform, flanked by Queen Avalynn's continued holographic presence and Dr. Foster's medical monitoring equipment. The rules were ancient but clear. Succession challenges required 3 trials testing strength, wisdom, and leadership capability. First trial begins, announced the Royal Herald, her voice amplified across the arena. Physical combat, traditional weapons only, victory by submission or incapacitation. Prince Theron drew his ceremonial sword, its crystalline blade humming with contained energy. Lyralei selected dual fighting staffs, their lightweight construction suited to her enhanced reflexes and improved strength. The crowd of political observers fell silent as the two royal heirs began circling each other. Theron attacked first, his blade sweeping in a devastating arc that would have cleaved a normal opponent in half. Lyralei's hybrid legs launched her above the strike with unprecedented speed, allowing her to land behind him before he could recover his guard. Her staff struck his shoulder with precise force, sending him staggering. The human genetic material is providing combat advantages we never anticipated, Dr. Foster observed, studying her readings. Her reflexes are operating at nearly twice normal Zephyrian baseline levels. Queen Avalynn watched her daughter's enhanced movements with visible pride. She moves like water, flows like wind. The human stem cells have given her capabilities that our species developed over thousands of years of evolution. Theron recovered and pressed his attack with renewed fury, his sword work displaying impressive skill despite his obvious disadvantage in speed and agility. Lyralei danced around his strikes, her hybrid physiology allowing her to execute maneuvers that defied traditional Zephyrian combat expectations. Just faster, Jake realized, watching the princess flow between attack patterns. She's thinking differently. The human genetic integration is affecting her cognitive processing as well as her physical capabilities. The first trial concluded when Lyralei's staff struck Theron's weapon hand with surgical precision, causing him to drop his sword. Rather than pressing her advantage, she stepped back and allowed him to retrieve his weapon, earning approving murmurs from the moderate factions in attendance. Second trial, the herald announced. Wisdom demonstration through problem resolution. Each candidate will address a crisis scenario drawn from current political challenges. A holographic display materialized between the two heirs, showing the ongoing human-Zephyrian conflict from multiple perspectives. Statistical casualties, resource depletion data, and economic impact projections painted a picture of mutual destruction that benefited neither species. Prince Theron spoke first. This conflict demonstrates human treachery and aggressive expansion. The only solution is complete military victory followed by territorial restrictions that prevent future human expansion into Zephyrian space. Princess Lyralei studied the data for several moments before responding. This conflict demonstrates the failure of both species to recognize mutual benefits from cooperation. Humans possess medical and technological innovations that could benefit our people immensely. We possess energy technologies and manufacturing capabilities that could revolutionize human civilization. War prevents us from exploring these advantages. The political observers began debating among themselves, their voices creating a low buzz of discussion throughout the arena. Jake could see faction representatives conferring with their advisors, weighing the practical implications of each approach. Third trial, the herald continued, leadership demonstration through command of actual military forces. Jake felt his blood run cold as the implications became clear. The final trial would involve both heirs commanding real fleets in actual combat, with the outcome determining not just succession, but potentially the immediate future of human-Zephyrian relations. Queen Avalynn's holographic presence flickered with concern. Captain Morrison, the third trial places your people in immediate danger. Theron will use his command authority to order direct attacks against human positions. And Princess Lyralei, Jake asked, will be required to demonstrate effective military leadership while honoring the genetic debt she owes to your species, the Queen replied grimly. She must prove she can command effectively while maintaining her commitment to human safety. Above them, the assembled fleets began repositioning, as word of the trial's nature spread through the various faction commanders. Human vessels found themselves surrounded by potentially hostile Zephyrian forces, while moderate Zephyrian ships tried to maintain neutral positions between competing loyalties. Lieutenant Commander Walsh's voice crackled through Jake's communicator. Morrison, we're detecting weapons systems powering up throughout the Zephyrian fleet. This trial could trigger the largest space battle in recorded history. Princess Lyralei looked directly at Jake, her violet eyes carrying both determination and apology. Captain, I must command Zephyrian forces in this trial, but I will not violate the debt I owe your people. Trust me to find a path that honors both obligations. Prince Theron's laugh echoed across the arena. Cousin, your human contamination has made you weak. I will demonstrate true Zephyrian strength by eliminating the human threat permanently. Jake realized that the next few hours would determine whether two civilizations found a path toward cooperation or destroyed each other in the most catastrophic military engagement their galaxy had ever witnessed. The princess's hybrid legs would carry her into a battle that would test not just her physical enhancement, but the fundamental question of whether different species could overcome their prejudices long enough to survive. The fate of countless worlds now rested in the hands of a young alien woman whose body carried human genetic material and whose heart carried the hope for peace between two civilizations that had forgotten how to trust each other. The final trial was about to begin, and Jake could only watch as the woman he had saved prepared to either unite their species or witness their mutual destruction in the cold vacuum of space above an alien world millions of miles from Earth.